Good evening, and welcome back to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. Tonight, we're exploring a metal so ordinary you pass it every day without thinking. In nails, in gates, in tools, in the frame of your home. But for centuries, iron was more than material. It was protection. It was a boundary. It was a weapon against things that did not belong in our world. The question is, why? For most of human history, the world was not divided neatly into natural and supernatural. The forest did not end where logic began. The night was not empty. It was inhabited. Across Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, stories spread of beings who lived alongside humanity but did not fully belong to it. Fair folk, fae, jinn, spirits of air and shadow. They were not always evil, but they were unpredictable. And what frightened people most was not malice. It was intrusion. Something slipping through the cracks of a doorway. Something standing just beyond the tree line. Something watching from the dark. And so, protection became ritual. One of the most common objects used for that protection was iron. Not gold, not silver, not stone. Iron. In British folklore, iron horseshoes were nailed above doorways to keep witches from entering. In Ireland and Scotland, iron blades were placed beneath cradles to prevent changelings from stealing infants. In Slavic regions, iron nails were driven into thresholds to prevent spirits from crossing. Even in parts of the Middle East, iron objects were believed to repel jinn. The pattern is too widespread to dismiss as coincidence. Iron was considered spiritually dangerous to spirits. But why? One explanation lies in the metal itself. Iron does not occur in pure form naturally in most landscapes. It must be extracted from ore through intense heat and human effort. Unlike wood, which grows, unlike stone, which is gathered, iron is transformed. It is born in fire. Early ironworking was mysterious and violent. Ore was heated to extraordinary temperatures. Sparks flew, smoke rose. Liquid metal was shaped into blades and tools. To ancient observers, this process must have seemed almost alchemical. Human beings, pulling something hard and unyielding out of earth through fire. Iron was not merely material, it was mastery. Many folklorists believe iron symbolized human dominance over nature. The fae, in Celtic lore, were creatures of the old world, of forests, hills, streams. They were tied to untouched landscapes, iron tools, axes, plows. These represented the cutting down of forests, the reshaping of land. To the fae, iron was not just unpleasant, it was invasive. It tore apart the world they inhabited. In that sense, iron repelled spirits because it embodied the rise of human civilization over wild spaces. It was the sound of the axe, the blade, the plow. It marked territory as claimed. But symbolism alone does not explain the fear. There are older layers. Before iron became common, humanity lived in what historians call the Bronze Age. When ironworking spread, it changed warfare permanently. Iron blades were stronger, more accessible, more durable. The Iron Age was marked by conquest and upheaval. Entire cultures were reshaped. In mythic memory, iron became associated with endings, with the breaking of old powers. Some scholars suggest that stories of iron harming supernatural beings may reflect the transition from older pagan belief systems to newer, iron-wielding societies. Iron did not just repel spirits, it replaced them. There is also a more practical explanation that creeps quietly beneath the folklore. Iron rusts, it stains, it carries a sharp scent, metallic, almost like blood. Blood itself is rich in iron. In many traditions, Blood was both sacred and dangerous. To hold iron was to hold something symbolically linked to life and violence. Perhaps spirits were believed to recoil not from the metal, but from what it represented: mortality. Unlike silver, which gleams untouched, iron corrodes. It decays visibly. It is not immortal. Perhaps that was its strength. There are stories throughout Celtic folklore where fair folk are described as ancient but fragile. They could be harmed by iron blades. A simple iron nail driven into the ground could break enchantments. Even accidental contact with iron could burn them. In Scottish lore, brides would carry small iron objects on their wedding day to prevent interference from unseen beings jealous of joy. In parts of rural England, shepherds carried iron knives when crossing lonely moors. Iron was insurance, but what is most fascinating is where iron was placed. Doorways, thresholds, windows, beds. These are liminal spaces, places of crossing. In folklore, spirits do not roam randomly. They enter through boundaries, the doorway between outside and inside, the cradle between life and vulnerability, the bed between waking and sleep. Iron marked the line. It said, "This far, no further." Anthropologists describe this as boundary magic, the use of physical objects to define psychological safety. By placing iron at points of entry, communities created visible reassurance. The home became sealed. Ritual gives structure to fear. But folklore rarely survives on psychology alone. There is a strange detail found in many traditions. Iron was particularly effective against beings described as otherworldly, rather than human ghosts. Fairies, jinn, shapeshifters, creatures not born of the human dead, but of parallel realms. It is almost as if iron was believed to interfere with something non-physical. Modern speculation, and it is only speculation, sometimes drifts toward the idea that iron disrupts electromagnetic fields, that it grounds energy, that it stabilizes. There is no scientific evidence that iron harms spirits, but there is symbolic poetry in the idea that a metal forged in fire and drawn from earth might disrupt something ethereal. Iron is heavy, grounded, dense. It is the opposite of air and illusion. In some ways, iron may not have repelled spirits because it was magical. It may have repelled them because it was real, cold, solid, unyielding. In a world filled with unseen fears, iron was tangible certainty. Interestingly, as societies industrialized and iron became common, in railways, bridges, cities, belief in iron's protective properties began to fade. The metal was no longer rare or sacred. It became ordinary. And perhaps, when something becomes ordinary, it loses its mystique. Yet the horseshoe remains above doorways. Even today, some people will hang one above an entrance, curved upward to hold the luck. Few could explain why iron specifically was used. The ritual outlived the reasoning, which is often how ancient protections survive. The deeper question may not be whether iron truly repels spirits. It may be why so many cultures believe the same thing independently. When stories repeat across geography, they often speak to shared human anxiety. We fear intrusion. We fear the unknown crossing into the safe. We fear that what lives beyond the firelight might step inside. Iron gave people something to hold in their hands. A blade, a nail, a horseshoe hammered into wood, a sound, the ringing strike of metal on metal that felt like resistance. Perhaps that was enough. The world today is brighter, electrified, monitored. The forest is smaller. And yet, many of us still feel unease at thresholds, at open windows at night, at doors not fully latched. We may not hang iron knives beneath cradles anymore, but we still lock our doors. We still mark boundaries. We still trust solid materials more than unseen spaces. And in some old cottages, far from city lights, there are still iron nails driven quietly into beams above doorways, not for decoration, just in case. Because whether iron was spiritually toxic, symbolically protective, or simply psychologically reassuring, it served one enduring purpose. It reminded people that they were not helpless, that even against the unseen, something could be held, something could be forged, something could be placed at the edge of darkness and say, no further. If tonight's story made you glance at the hinges on your door or the nails in your walls, then perhaps the old belief still lingers somewhere beneath the surface. Subscribe to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries for more forgotten protections, ancient fears, and the rituals we still carry without knowing why. And the next time you see a horseshoe above a doorway, ask yourself who it was meant to keep out. Sleep well.